So I still run into a lot of arguments about people trying to argue that Bernie would have lost against Donald Trump. In some cases, people think that Bernie would have lost in a landslide. Now, I'm simply going to make an argument for why that is not the case. You can believe me, don't believe me, but at least I'm going to offer some data and some information to back up why I believe that Bernie would have easily beat Donald Trump. So I should first say that I'm here joined by Mary.
Hi.
She's going to help me explain this along. So first we need to look at why Hillary Clinton lost. So Hillary Clinton lost because of the Rust Belt states. She didn't campaign there in the final weeks. She didn't really have a message for the Rust Belt states as Bernie and Donald Trump did, especially on trade. And she generally lacked a message for working class voters, which is why she lost states like Ohio and Pennsylvania and Michigan, states that otherwise would be Democratic states. So despite her having the popular vote by over 3 million votes, she lost the election because of Rust Belt states, states that Bernie performed well in.
Okay, what about the whole argument that Hillary won the primary? If Bernie can't even win the primary, how is he supposed to win an election?
So why did Hillary win the primary? You'll win states in the primary that you necessarily will not win in the general election. So Hillary Clinton won the primary based on her strong performance in the southern states, states that she went on to lose in the general election against Donald Trump, states that I agree Bernie would have also lost. But those states weren't important going into the general election. They were only important to win the primaries. This is why Hillary came out with a strong performance in the primaries.
What about the whole argument that Hillary was able to get the support from the Democrats? Bernie would not have had the Democrat establishment on his side. So not only did he have to win over independents, he had to win over moderate Democrats, which Hillary was doing great with.
So this is a ridiculous argument because are Democrat voters going to vote for Donald Trump? If those are their options going in...
Some of them did.
No, but you're talking about the establishment Democrat voters. Mm-hmm. Yeah, some Democrats did vote for Donald Trump when faced with Hillary Clinton or Donald Trump. But if you're worried that Bernie Sanders would have lost the establishment vote to Donald Trump, it doesn't make any... Bernie would have ended up having the support of people who vote anyways. People that, generally older people who go out, they're going to pick a candidate. They're going to pick the Democrat or the Republican. And when you're faced with the decision of picking Bernie Sanders or Donald Trump or Hillary Clinton or Donald Trump, they're going to go with a Democrat, whether it's Bernie Sanders or Hillary Clinton. Now, the issue arises when you have people who don't normally go out and vote, people who don't want to vote unless they're excited about a candidate. And this is why having a strong Democratic base is so important, because you need those people out to vote for you. You need to have them excited to vote for you. Bernie Sanders had that excitement. People came out to vote for Bernie Sanders, people that normally would not vote, people that hadn't voted in years, people that consider themselves independents, people that were millennials. These are large groups of people who were not excited about voting for Hillary Clinton and didn't vote for Hillary Clinton, and is a large reason why she lost those Rust Belt states.
Okay, so there's this argument that a lot of Democrats have, and a lot of the focus was Bernie would have won based on the Rust Belt. Well, some Democrats argue against this, and they're like, well, we're not the party that focuses on the white working class. So why should that be one of the main reasons why Bernie would have won? Like, the Democratic Party is supposed to be this party that is inclusive. So in those southern states that have like a lot of minorities, that have a lot of Latinos, that have immigrants, why is it that Bernie or the Democrats, like, why is it that the focus should be the Rust Belts and the coal miners that Trump won?
That shouldn't be the focus. The focus is on everybody. The reason why I'm focusing on the Rust Belt is that's why she lost the election. So she was able to get the votes of enough other people in enough other areas that she could have won had she also had the Rust Belt states. But she didn't have those states, and that's why she lost. That's why we're discussing I wouldn't call it white working class voters either. I call it just working class voters. She didn't have working class voters.
Okay, Bernie has never had a single ad attacked at him. Like, he's never been attacked ever. So seeing as Trump is just a bully, how would he have been able to compete with someone like Trump and the Republican Party. Hillary Clinton has had smear campaigns against her for her
and
whole
you know what
life.
exactly, and you know why? That's why she lost. That's part of the reason she lost. So why would you run a candidate who already is unpopular against Donald Trump, who is immensely... Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton were the two least popular candidates to ever run for president in a general election. And the one that was supposedly even the least, more or less popular, does that make sense? More or less popular? Donald Trump won despite being less popular than Hillary Clinton. But they were both very unpopular candidates. Bernie Sanders is one of the most popular candidates to ever run for president, at least in a primary. And to run someone like Hillary Clinton, who, you're right, has had 20, 30 years of attacks against her, it's not very smart. She was already unliked. This idea that somehow Bernie Sanders would have been as much unliked as Hillary Clinton in the span of 6 months is ridiculous. It took years and years for Hillary Clinton to get the reputation that she has. And it's not just the fact that she has attack ads run against her. She's done a lot of shit that people don't like. She's a typical politician. She takes money. She does what the money says. We know her, she's corrupted by Wall Street. We know all these things about her already. There are absolutely reasons, there are absolutely attacks against her that are ridiculous, but there are a lot of attacks against her that are legitimate. There are real reasons to not like Hillary Clinton and not want to vote for her. And to put that candidate up is just, it's misguided. To think that somehow Bernie Sanders would be less popular than Hillary Clinton is insane.
So what about the whole argument that Bernie is a socialist and America would never vote for a socialist?
Show me data. Because I have other data that says otherwise. So on election night, there was polls done across the country pitting Sanders against Trump. If it were Sanders on the ticket instead of Hillary Clinton against Donald Trump, would you have voted differently? Here's what the poll showed. So this is a report from The Independent. The poll commissioned by Gravis Marketing found that the Vermont senator would have likely earned 56% of the vote, while Mr. Trump would have only received 44%. The poll found that Mr. Sanders led Ms. Clinton among independent voters 55 to 45%. Ms. Clinton suffered a major blow Tuesday night from that particular demographic, losing independents to Donald Trump 48% to 42%. Now this is what was overlooked in the primaries. People were so concerned about who got the most Democratic votes. A lot of people now don't consider themselves Democrats. They're independents. So by you not looking at how important the independent vote actually is in the general election, you are completely missing the reality of the electorate and who people would likely vote for. Now, you put an independent Vermont senator in a Democratic position, an independent. You think he's going to appeal to independents? That's who a large swath of his voting base, when there were open primaries, were. They were people that didn't consider themselves Republicans or Democrats. They were independents. And Bernie won a lot of the states that were open primaries because independents were able to vote for him. They didn't have to be registered to a party in order to vote for Bernie Sanders.
So there's this whole concept of Bernie Sanders not only is just a socialist, but he wants to raise your taxes. And that's what the right wing would have hit him on with like the socialist title. So seeing as Americans don't like taxes, how do you think?
The problem is that's a very generalized statement. It's so easy to combat that by showing something like Bernie's plan on healthcare. While on the surface it would appear that you're paying more in taxes because you are, the reality is you no longer would be paying a premium because your taxes pay for your health care. So the money you save on not paying for health insurance over the course of a year, you actually save money when it's moved to your taxes. And that's at least the case for the majority of Americans. This is a large part of the reason why the wealthy didn't like Bernie Sanders, is because they'd have to pay more. And you may think that's terrible. People have to why are people getting taxed more, having their money taken away? Here's the reality. Rich people don't use their money. It sits in the bank. It doesn't do anything. It just grows there for the next generation, for their kids who don't have to work as hard because they have millions of dollars to start with. How does that make any sense? Wouldn't it make more sense to put that money back into the economy for other people to benefit, and then we can all benefit? Or does it make more sense for a multimillionaire to have a couple million more in the bank so it can sit there for his grandkids? What makes more sense? To me, it makes more sense to tax the rich more and spread that wealth out. Maybe you don't think that, but I don't see what money sitting in a bank is doing in benefiting anybody. It doesn't benefit the rich person either. Okay. Isn't it just handouts to rich people and their families? Now their kids don't have to work as hard because they have this extra $1 million. It doesn't make any sense. Why is socialism okay for the rich, but it's not okay for everybody else? How is that fair? So these are arguments that are easy to make when you look at them objectively. And I believe Americans are smart enough to see that and be like, yeah, you know, he's right. That's correct. It's okay for me to pay a little more tax because in the long run, I'm saving by not paying health insurance. So just more on unfavorability, because I don't want to just be spouting out facts without actually backing it up. So this is a report from the Washington Post, who largely can be considered an establishment publication. But this is what they said about the favorability between Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders. Hillary has annually ranked among the least liked politicians on the national stage since she was the First Lady. In recent years, her low favorability rating was matched only by that of her opponent, animated hate muppet Donald Trump. In contrast, Sanders enjoys very high popularity, ranking as the most popular senator for 2 years in a row. Nationally, his favorability rating is more than 10 points higher than Clinton's, and his unfavorability rating is more than 15 points lower. This popularity would have been a real asset on the campaign trail. Critics of Sanders were quick to poke holes in his favorability ratings, arguing that he had never been through the bruising Republican attacks that Clinton had, and that attack ads spotlighting him self-professed socialism would surely erode his advantage in favorability. Perhaps this was true. Trump surely would have pointed out that Sanders identified as a socialist, that he seemed at times radical, and so on. But it fundamentally meant placing a hypothetical above the direct evidence that Sanders was simply a far more popular politician. Clinton struggled to use Trump's wealth against him, in large measure because she herself is an immensely wealthy woman. Sanders would have been able to contrast Trump's ostentatious wealth with his own shabby aesthetic. The message writes itself. Trump talks a good game about economic anxiety, but why would you trust this New York billionaire to put your interests first? So there's a clear contrast between Bernie Sanders and Donald Trump. And leading up to the general election, this is what a lot of people were complaining about. They didn't like either candidate. They didn't like Donald Trump. They didn't like Hillary Clinton. This is something you heard often. Maybe if you're in your bubble on either side, you didn't hear this. But this was a common theme among people who were discussing voting. A lot of people didn't want to vote. They didn't care because they didn't like Hillary Clinton enough to vote for her. They hated Donald Trump, a lot of them, but they didn't like Hillary Clinton enough to vote for her and put her in. And the vice versa happened a lot. So while Clinton and Donald Trump seem almost cut from the same cloth, they're both immensely rich New Yorkers. You'd have this Bernie Sanders, who is not a rich man. He is among the least wealthy people in Congress, against Donald Trump, this billionaire who cheated his way to the top, took his daddy's money, lost it all, and then continues to cheat his way to the top, not paying taxes. There was a clear distinction between Bernie Sanders and Donald Trump. Donald Trump is connected to the wealthy. Bernie Sanders has been actively fighting against the wealthy for 40 years, and there's video proof of that. This is not a hard argument to make on the campaign trail or in commercials. Play clips of both candidates. Do you see any clips of Hillary Clinton from 30 years ago in her campaign? Fuck no, because she hasn't been doing this shit. Healthcare is the one thing that she fought for in the 90s, but she hasn't been talking out against the wealthy like Bernie Sanders has. You put a clip of him from 1990 talking about that in a commercial.
Not only is the gap between the rich and the poor growing wider, but we have a situation now in the United States where the richest 0.5% of the population owns 45% of the wealth.
Contrast that with Donald Trump talking about,
we bought a whole series of birds for the suites in the Plaza Hotel. Now, I mean, these are real live birds. And all sorts of little birds flying around in the suites. And some people walk in, they don't believe what they're seeing. Usually they're little artificial birds. These are real birds. And we have to be very...
There's a clear distinction there. There was not a clear distinction between Clinton and Donald Trump. Hey, I'm David Dole of The Rational National. I cover politics, entertainment, and anything that happens to be irrational. If you like this video, hit subscribe.